Stories from my life and the theme of betrayal. I learned about betrayal very early in life. It is a theme that repeats itself from my earliest memories to this day. Don't get me wrong, in that I am not implying that I had been betrayed just last week or at any point in recent history, but that to be truthful as a teller of the stories from my life, including in my new memoir, Betrayal is still with me, but only has a hot button, as I have been conditioned from youth to be ultra sensitive about it. In writing my memoir and the stories of my life, my earliest memory was of my parents' betrayal. They were supposed to be my protectors. Instead, my father was my antagonist. Starting with my earliest years, my cousin Judy Durbin once told me while we were at a family wedding that she heard my father once kick me when I was only 2 years old. Now, I'm not on solid ground with that memory, but I do have memories of the beatings thereafter at around 3 or 4 years old. This was my first taste of betrayal, as a parent is not supposed to beat their children, but to love and protect them. My mother, to a lesser degree, betrayed me in that she did not always protect me from my father's wrath. In retrospect, as back then all I felt was hurt and rage. My thoughts today are, where was she to stop the madness? Of course, I do understand that a woman in the 1940s had far fewer options than today's emancipated women. However, while I know this, I still find it hard to reconcile the fact that she let me down and did not or could not stop the abuse from my father. I guess my understanding of the role of the parent as protector on behalf of a child was that it meant protecting at all costs. I was not always protected, as I was betrayed in that. Betrayal became my central hot button at a very early age, as reflected in the stories of my life. At the age of 4, I had a hard lesson in abandonment in telling the stories of my life. I did not become aware of how this affected me until I grew much older. But as a little kid, full of rage, due to the beatings and ill treatment from my father and my very young age, I could only express my feelings with rage. Right about the time that my sister left our home, I tossed a brick from the roof of our apartment on Clarkson Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, narrowly missing a baby in a carriage. My sister had come to live with us immediately following my birth and helped take care of me, and thus we bonded. When she turned 12 and I was 4 years old, her mother called in the loan of my sister Tina. My father had been married before meeting my mother, so we had different mothers. Tina's mother met and married an extremely wealthy man, and they wanted her to live with them, so she left. As a small child, all I knew was that my sister was no longer there, that I was abandoned and therefore betrayed. To my little mind at that time, abandonment was betrayal. How could anyone abandon such a cute little kid as I? By the time I was 6 years old, I was a mental wreck. There was just so much abuse a child can take. So the icing on the cake was to deal with my reactions to abandonment and betrayal, only to give me more of the same. My father, in his warped and mentally ill brain, could not figure out that his beatings and making me feel unsafe at home caused me to act out. Thus it must be the kid's fault. My next stop on the hellbound train of betrayal was for me to be sent away. At the ripe old age of 6 years old, they sent me to a mental hospital for observation. Yes, it should have been my father, but he was, of course, the breadwinner and the head of the family. Yes, whilst there, my parents and the staff committed further acts of betrayal. I will not go into further detail here, as this has been amply covered in my memoir, The Detailed Stories from My Life. This was to be the setup for my life thereafter. I would possess a raging hot button for abandonment and betrayal.